Hey everyone, this is Amanda from devotioninaction.com. We have the free printable for this week. I'm in Isaiah 58, and we're going to go through most of the chapter, but kind of focused in on verses 7 and 8. And again, you could do this one and fit it inside the column or one of the smaller ones, but I'm going to do the great big one. There's a lot of white space on this page, and it's kind of cool because the arm, which is going to be the lighter skin color, kind of goes right over the focus verses of 7 and 8, so that will kind of highlight that, make it easy to read through the watercolor, and it just worked out really well. Happy accident, because I certainly didn't draw it on here before I drew it to create the free printables. It just worked out that way, so that's pretty cool. So Isaiah 58, verses 7 and 8 say, "Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the poor and homeless into your house, to clothe the naked when you see him, and not to ignore your own flesh and blood? Then your light will appear like the dawn, and your recovery will come quickly. Your righteousness will go before you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard." And this kind of pulls these two verses kind of out of context. So we're going to dive in a little deeper and read, we're going to go backwards in the, and start at an earlier verse and come forward so that you can kind of see what the context of these verses is. But we're coming into the fourth week of Lent, and if you're fasting something, you might be feeling a wide range of emotions. It might feel great. You might feel like, woohoo, I'm fasting, that's fantastic. You might be feeling like you're feeling so close to God and everything feels fantastic, but you might be like really leaning in, and then bad stuff keeps happening in everyday life, or you don't see an answer to your prayer, or you feel worse than you did before. Maybe you're tired or frustrated, and you aren't the first one to feel this way. If we back up in this chapter, Isaiah 58:3 reveals the emotions of the people of Israel as they cried out to the Lord. They said, "Why have we fasted, but you have not seen?" They're talking to God. "We have denied ourselves, but you haven't noticed." So they feel like even God is not paying attention to them when they are fasting and praying and weeping and mourning before Him. And do you know what God says? Oh, this one's kind of painful. He says, "Look, you do as you please on the day of your fast, and oppress all your workers. You fast with contention and strife, to strike viciously with your fist. You cannot fast as you do today, hoping to make your voice heard on high. Will the fast I choose be like this? A day for a person to deny himself, to bow his head like a reed, and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Will you call this fast and a day acceptable to the Lord?" That's Isaiah 58, 3b through verse 5. So he's saying that you may be fasting, you're spreading out sackcloth and ashes, you're denying yourself and bowing your head, but then you oppress the people who are working for you. You are full of contention, and you're inciting people to strife, kind of striking people viciously, both figuratively and literally in this case. And so what you're doing is, this fast is not acceptable to me in this situation. So as I finished the tracing out with the pencil, and I'm using my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen, which is India ink, it will not react to water. So again, if you do not have a pen that will not react to water, you're going to need to watercolor before you line out with black pen so that you don't end up with runny black pen everywhere. This one will not move once it's on the page. It doesn't matter if I watercolor with lots of water over the top of it. It's just going to stay put where it belongs, which is fantastic. I love it. My favorite pen. So the Lord is focused not on the fasting and sacrifice of the Israelite people, but on their behavior in daily life. He was attentive to how they treated the other people around them. They were contentious, sowing strife and striking out viciously. So last week we reflected on how we're not supposed to mope and look gloomy while we're fasting to get other people's attention and praise. And this week we learned that we can't mistreat others and expect our fasting to bring any heavenly benefit. So that heavenly reward that we were talking about really wanting last week, another way that we can kind of block that from ever happening is by mistreating others. So what pleases God? God doesn't just leave us with what displeases Him and what's not acceptable. He also sets the expectations for what a fasting season should be. He says, "Isn't this the fast I choose? to break the chains of wickedness. So during our fasting, we're supposed to be breaking sin off of our lives, right? To untie the ropes of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, and to tear off every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the poor and homeless into your house, to clothe the naked when you see him, and not to ignore your own flesh and blood? Then your light will appear like the dawn, and your recovery will come quickly, and your righteousness will go before you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard. So as we do these leaves, you're going to put down kind of a light coat of green where there would be shadows or the lower edges of the leaves. I'm allowing that to pool and get darker. So that one that I just did, it kind of folds over. So the part that is in the shadow of the other fold is going to be darker, right? And it's kind of the underside being shadowed there is going to be darker. And the stems as well in that green. So to break the chains of wickedness, to set the oppressed free, to share your bread with the hungry and clothe the naked, love your neighbor. Does this sound familiar? Care for your family. It says don't ignore your own flesh and blood. Extend your hand and your heart to those around you. And so this is kind of where I got this picture of this bouquet of hearts, basically. Okay, we're extending care, we're extending love to other people, offering love to other people. We're putting our hearts in our hands and using our hands to do practical things to show that we care. Giving bread to the hungry, clothing the naked. These are things that are practical ways of showing God's love to other people through just these practical means. So we're putting our hearts in our hands and we're extending them out to other people. All of God's expectations are about how we treat the people in our lives. And one of the pillars of Lent is almsgiving, which means just giving to the poor. I believe that the root of this practice is found right here in Isaiah 58. God's desire is for his people to care for all people, bringing them into freedom and helping them when they are in need. So if we're fasting and reading and praying, but we ignore those in need around us, all our work is for nothing. However, if we fast and care for those in our lives, God promises some pretty amazing things, right? What was that last verse in our series here? Then your light will appear like the dawn, and your recovery will come quickly. Your righteousness will go before you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard. Light and recovery, righteousness, and the Lord's glory. I don't know about you, but I want those things in my life. While we're fasting and praying, let's not forget to reach out our hands to help others and extend our hearts to show love to our family, to our neighbors, our friends, co-workers. Let's put our hearts in our hands and give love in those practical ways. So as you're doing the hearts here, again, you want to kind of leave it lightest in the center and top, and give it darkest along the bottom and the edges, like it's rolling away from you, so they're three-dimensional. Then they look kind of almost like puffy hearts on stems when you do that. The action step is really simple today, but sometimes it's hard for us to actually do it, right? Think of one way that one thing that you can do today to show someone that you care for them, someone in your life. It doesn't matter if it's someone in your family or a coworker, a friend, someone from church, or someone from work, someone from, a group. Maybe you're a part of a club or a hobby or something like that, that you can share God's love with them in a practical way. And then don't just think about it, do it, like today. Do it as soon as possible. Sometimes we make grand plans and we're like, oh, but we got to get this and this and this together. Think of something simple, something you can do today. One thing, and do it. And then think of another thing, that you can do tomorrow, right? So let's think of those simple things. If you have ideas for what those could be, you could share them in the comments under this post or under the Lent Week 4 post at facebook.com. This is the Devo in Action, at Devo in Action. That's also my handle. You can tag me on Instagram at Devo in Action and give some ideas of how we can practically put our hearts in our hands and share God's love with other people in our lives. I want to pray with you and for you. Dear God, we want to please you during this season of Lent and afterwards as we go about life. Show us how to share your love in concrete and practical ways with those around us. Shine through us to bring your light to our corner of the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And so as we are watercoloring this skin tone on this arm and hand, you're going to want a lighter color where like the light would be shining down on it, and then where it would cast a shadow, we're adding in those darker tones, a little bit different tones, so that you can see those shadows, and it adds dimensionality. It makes it feel like it is three-dimensional. Fingernails, again, we've talked about before, are not white. They have a little bit of fleshy color underneath them, so you're going to want to put some kind of color on those fingernails so they don't just pop out crazy paper white. And I think that this will look a whole lot better if we give it a background color. Again, I'm trying something new here. Normally my background color is aqua with like a blue-green kind of color, and I'm adding some purple. I know, I'm really like, this is staring for me. And making it kind of a purple, blue, gray kind of color. And pretty dark. I'm going pretty dark with this one. I'm not super saturated. You can still see through it. But a little bit of a darker base color for this. And I really like how it did turn out. And something kind of interesting happens when you get too close to paint that hasn't dried yet. It's wet. Then it's going to, it will run into it. So I've got wet paint that I'm putting down right now. If you get too close to paint that hasn't dried yet on the other parts, you're going to either the dark color of the background that you're putting down will run into your picture, or the other way around. The color from your picture is going to run into this water that you're putting on the page right now. Now, most of my edges on this watercolor have already dried. So you can see as I come right along the edge of that, it's not running into the other parts of the picture. But when I get up around the heart on the right, there are some places that are not completely dry yet, and something pretty cool happens. I actually really like how this turned out. It was not intended, but hey, you know, some of the best things when you're doing watercolor are not intended. Right there. See how it's starting to move into the other color? And I'm just going to take that and kind of create more places for that to run out and kind of spread. I almost kind of saw this like the fragrance of a flower is spreading around, and you're kind of filling the atmosphere with God's love when you are extending that love to other people. So really kind of liked the symbolism in that, and liked how it ended up drying out after it kind of ran all over the place for a little bit there. So that was a very happy accident. I don't know, if you're not big on the watercolor running wherever it wants and kind of going with those kind of happy accidents, then you're going to want to make sure that you dry the image before you do the background color. So just make sure it's really dry. Once it's dry, you can go along the edge of it, and it's not going to cause you a lot of problems. It's not going to run out, as long as you're not like reactivating that with water on top of the actual image. But I kind of liked it. I like the heart kind of spreading out there into the background. So, and then I'm just going to dry this, and I like how it turned out a lot. I don't know, I don't think it shows as well on camera as it does in person. It has a lot of kind of saturation and depth in person that doesn't really show on camera as much. But I do really like how this one turned out, and I like how that is kind of running across there. So just kind of help that even a little bit more and darken in closer. I want it darker closer to the image and lighter out away from the image. A little bit more of that purple, gray, blue, I don't know, background color. hey, you should be proud of me. It's not blue-green like it is every other time. I'm branching out and trying new things, right? Being risky here. Yeah, so let me know what your favorite background colors are. What do you like to use in the background of your Bible art journaling? What do you like to do as far as making it where the image is not just hanging in white space on the page? So I'd love to hear your ideas as well. So just kind of hitting this with a heat tool, getting that completely dry, and I'm going to write on there at Devo in Action. That's my handle on Instagram and Facebook. And that's Devo for devotion, and then N-I-N action, right? And then Lent week 4, 2023, just so that later in life I can go back and remember what God was speaking to me, and the blog post. You've got actually a lot of space here where up on the right or above the hearts you could journal quite a bit. When I'm going to journal about especially personal things that God is speaking to me, not just like titles or notes from the blog post, I'll do that after I finish filming, just because those personal things that I'll put on the internet. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in week 5.